Coming up on Bridge City News, Eileen Chrétien, wife of former PM Jean Chrétien, died peacefully Saturday morning at the age of 84. At least 15 dead in wildfires across Oregon, Washington State, and California. And 3 taken to hospital in serious condition after a head-on crash on Highway 3 near Fort Macleod.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Thank you for joining us. Eileen Chrétien, wife of former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, has died at the age of 84. She was surrounded by family Saturday morning at her home in Shawinigan, Quebec, a family spokesman said Sunday. Chrétien credits Eileen with restraining some of his more boisterous youthful impulses and instilling him with self-discipline. Family spokesman Bruce Hartley said only a private ceremony is being planned for now because of COVID-19 restrictions. A public memorial will be planned for some time in the future. Hundreds of firefighters battled 2 large wildfires Friday that threatened to merge near the most populated part of Oregon. The number of people ordered to evacuate statewide because of the fires rose to an estimated 500,000, more than 10% of the state's 4.2 million people.
As of now, there are early reports from our state police that there are dozens of missing persons related to the fires, specifically in Jackson, Lane, and Marion counties. We will keep you updated as we gather more information. I'm grateful to be able to offer some improving news today, and even more grateful for the acts of love and support I'm seeing in every community across our entire state. Even in the darkest of times, Oregonians step up to help one another in extraordinary ways.
Smoke from U.S. forest fires blew into Alberta on Saturday, prompting Environment and Climate Change Canada to issue air quality alerts for the southwest portion of the province. The alert said that the smoke would cause poor air quality and reduced visibility for areas including Waterton Lakes National Park, Pincher Creek, Crow's Nest Pass, and Cardston County. Officials say 3 people were taken to hospital in Calgary after they were involved in a head-on crash near Monarch Saturday afternoon. Fort Macleod RCMP said they were first called to respond to a report of a vehicle driving in the wrong direction on Highway 3. While officers were headed to the incident, another call reported the eastbound vehicle had struck a westbound SUV. The driver of the car was airlifted to Calgary by Stars Air Ambulance in serious condition, while the 2 occupants of the SUV were taken by ground ambulance. They were listed in serious but non-life-threatening condition. The investigation is ongoing. Albertans can now sign up to be notified of COVID-19 test results by text message to reduce wait times. According to the AHS screening site, it's the fastest way to receive results.
That is why today I am pleased to announce that Albertans can now get their COVID-19 test results, positive or negative, through text messages or through an auto dialer phone system. Albertans will be able to select their choice of notification options when they book their appointment with Alberta Health Services. This is in addition to the existing auto dialer system previously used only for negative results, and of course the option to access records on My Health Records online. It's important to note that those who test positive for COVID-19 will still be contacted by phone by an Alberta Health Services public health professional for follow-up and case management. The text messages or auto dialer option simply give people the ability to be notified as soon as the lab result is available, with the follow-up phone call for positive results to ensure that people understand what to do to prevent spread and to complete contact tracing. Also, if you opt in to receive a text message, you can receive your test result anytime, day or night, as soon as the lab result is available. Parents and guardians will also now be able to consent to receive automated test results for dependents. Each individual test result will be delivered by a separate call or text. This is another step forward and will help us get test results to Albertans quicker, which will be vital to limiting the spread of COVID-19 in the coming weeks and months.
Paris Hilton says she finally feels free after speaking out about abuse she encountered at a Utah boarding school as a teenager. Hilton opens up about the experience in a new documentary, This is Paris.
I feel like the whole world thinks they know me.
That's hot. That's hot. All set.
Sorry, I'm so used to playing a character that it's hard for me to be normal.
No one really knows who I am.
During shooting, I was on a press tour in Korea and was just so emotionally, physically exhausted. And I just opened up to Alex, the director, because I felt so comfortable with her. And then from there, she just kind of kept pushing me to keep telling her more about it. And it ended up being a very therapeutic experience to talk about that for the first time.
Something happened to my childhood that I've never talked about with anyone.
Something that has affected my life in so many ways, and having severe nightmares where I was taken back there and trapped there and trying to escape. And just every single night since I'm a little girl, I've had those nightmares. And it's amazing that ever since I've talked about it and released that, and I'm in such an incredible relationship, that I have not had one nightmare. So I finally feel free.
The documentary debuts on September 14th on Hilton's YouTube channel. Have you ever wondered what creatures roam the grasslands of Alberta? The Grasslands series at the Helen Schuler Nature Centre is an interactive exhibit that highlights many animals and landscapes. As Micah Quinn explains, the display showcases special paintings and drawings from a Lethbridge artist.
When you walk around the Grasslands series display, you'll notice taxidermy, paintings, and drawings, and they're all the creation of artist Colin Starkevich.
I paint wildlife mostly all throughout Alberta, but the Grasslands holds a special place in my heart, and I know it's my muse, and I want to portray the grasslands the best I can through my artwork, as I feel it's a region that's quite overlooked when it comes to the conservation of the land.
Starkevich works in 3 different styles, which include fine art studio pieces, field paintings, and erratic drawings.
Here's an example of one here, and these pieces are created in oil and acrylic paints back home in my studio. The other 2 pieces you'll see in this show are what I call plein air paintings, also referred to as field paintings, and they are paintings that I do in oils on canvas and masonite panels. So the erratics are small or large boulders that are scattered all over the prairies left behind by the last ice age, and I create these drawings of them.
Starkevich says he wants his work to focus on the positive aspects of wildlife conservation.
This painting depicts swift fox, which are a fox species here in the Grasslands region. And the title for this painting is Beating the Odds. And I decided to give this painting this title because the story about the swift fox is a conservation success story.
The Nature Center says the exhibition has been especially popular with visitors.
I think the realism accurately captures a lot of those finer details and that subtle beauty. Colin also has done a great job of layering in sort of multiple different senses experiences. So we do have an audio component that really does allow you to immerse yourself as if you were out in the grasslands checking out some of these really cool animals.
The Grassland Series display will be open to the public until December at the Helen Schuler Nature Center. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Recapping one of our top news stories. Officials say 3 people were taken to hospital in Calgary after they were involved in a head-on crash near Monarch Saturday afternoon. The driver of the car was airlifted to Calgary by Stars Air Ambulance in serious condition, while the 2 occupants of the SUV were taken by ground ambulance. They were listed in serious but non-life-threatening condition. And a look at weekend weather. Get ready for a dip in air quality tonight and into tomorrow as smoke continues to move north. Tonight, it will be partly cloudy with local smoke and a low of 11. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy with some smoke and a high of 23. Businesses in Lethbridge have gone through a lot with the economic shutdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. To talk about its impact on our city and to share initiatives that are helping our city's small businesses is Trevor Lewington, CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge. That interview is up next, but first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Seniors Golf is held every Tuesday and Thursday at Evergreen Golf Center. Come for a fun 9-hole game. Cost is $11 per person, and golfers must supply their own clubs. For more information and to book your tee time, call 403-329-4500. The Center for Suicide Prevention is hosting their 3rd annual Run for Life on Sunday, September 27th. Run for Life is a virtual event this year. Anyone who is passionate about suicide prevention is welcome to join for a virtual journey from darkness into light. Walk or run to remember your loved one and raise awareness for suicide prevention. For details, visit Center for Suicide Prevention Facebook page and follow the events link. Get out and explore nature. The Helen Schiller Nature Center is offering guided 1-hour field trips for all ages. Visit lethbridge.ca/things to do. Click on Nature Center and follow the events page, where you'll find a list of featured tours that will introduce you to amazing plants and animals found right here in Lethbridge. Cost is $25. Book online for your tour today. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Our city's businesses have gone through a lot with the economic shutdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. To talk about its impact on Lethbridge and to share initiatives that are helping our city's small businesses is Trevor Lewington, CEO of Economic Development at Lethbridge. Trevor, thanks so much for joining us on Skype today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, even if it virtually.
Absolutely, always a pleasure. Okay, so every city in Canada has been impacted by the pandemic. How is Lethbridge doing economically compared to other cities across Alberta?
Yeah, I mean, Lethbridge has a relatively diverse economy. Our foundation in agriculture has helped us weather past storms, and so I don't want to minimize the impact. It is significant, both in terms of job loss and potential impact to the business community. But Lethbridge has fared much better than the rest of the province so far, and we expect that to continue.
Well, that's good news, at least. What are the forecasted impacts of coronavirus on the economy?
Yeah, I mean, in the Lethbridge Medicine Hat employment region, we've seen a loss of about 15,000 jobs, as an example. At the peak of the pandemic, we've since recovered about 4,000 of those. But Lethbridge Medicine Hat still has the lowest unemployment in the province. So it's a good news, bad news story. I mean, I don't want to minimize the story for those 15,000 people that were impacted, but it's proportionally far better than the rest of the province. Alberta as a whole, the forecast is that the economy will shrink by probably upwards of 11%, which is the single largest contraction basically since the Second World War. And the Lethbridge number is expected to be somewhere between 5 and 8%. So still significant. That's very painful, but again, relatively better performing than the rest of Alberta.
So where are we seeing growth and where are we seeing losses then?
Yeah, well, as you might expect, sectors like accommodation, the hotels, restaurants that were probably most significantly impacted by the closures and public health measures have taken the brunt of employment and business loss. But surprisingly to us, even sectors like manufacturing have struggled. We've seen significant slowdown in agri-food processing, as an example, because restaurants are closed, those products are not required. We've seen that back up through the value chain. So it has impacted broad sectors of the economy.
Wow. And what's being done to support economic recovery efforts?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think all 3 levels of government have done a great job of putting many programs out there. That can sometimes be a challenge when businesses aren't quite sure how to navigate all of the different programs and supports. But whether it's income supports and business loans at the federal level, returning to business strategies and grants from the province, and even locally, the city's looking very heavily at stimulus projects and capital investments that will help get people back to work. So the good news is, I think all 3 levels of government are actively looking at economic recovery. They're trying to coordinate their efforts. The challenge, of course, is if you're a business that's struggling, that help can't come fast enough.
So it's nice to see that the government's offering that aid, but has that financial aid that's been offered by federal and provincial governments, has it been enough for those small businesses to stay afloat?
Yeah, I mean, we have certainly seen business closures and business failures in our community. We're certainly not exempt, just like every other community across the country and around the world, arguably. That's the sad part is when these business owners invest their blood, sweat, and tears and many years of their lives into building up these businesses and circumstances beyond their control take them away. What we've heard is that business owners appreciate the cash that's been injected into markets. The governments have not predominantly it's been grants as opposed to loans. So that puts money back in people's hands to make an impact. The challenge has been some of the commercial rent supports haven't been as well received by landlords, and so many businesses aren't seeing those savings passed on to them. So certainly there have been some programs that have been more successful than others.
Now, do you think the mask bylaw will affect businesses in Lethbridge?
Yeah, I mean, businesses, I think, have embraced the mask bylaw. I mean, they recognize that it's, again, not something that they have control. And for the most part, I think customers are, recognizing that they're not the mask police. It's not something that they've imposed. It is, of course, challenging that it adds extra complexity in terms of controlling the number of people coming in and out of your store, monitoring interactions, and just making sure your folks, whether it's your staff or your customers, are protected. But it definitely adds a new challenge and another complexity to just trying to do business.
Yeah, that's true. And it seems that most people are pretty compliant with the bylaw. I'm not seeing too much opposition out in public, that is. We're seeing a different thing online, of course, but yeah.
Well, yeah, the keyboard warriors behind social media are always much more brave behind in the peace and security of their own home. But certainly when I've been out and about, there are definitely people that are complying with the mask bylaw. I've not seen any data from the city that would suggest it's a significant compliance outage. There are always going to be people that have exemptions that are legitimate that we have to recognize. It's important not to judge people not wearing masks, of course. There are some reasons not to wear them. But it's also but it's also something that's been recommended from a public health perspective. And I think the vast majority of people in Lethbridge are just taking it as one more step to protect their neighbors and protect their families.
We were talking earlier about the loans and the grants, and it's great to see that a lot of these businesses can take advantage of some of the provincial and federal grants. I know in the beginning it was more of a loan, and I think some businesses shied away from accepting that because they were afraid that if their business closed, they would still have to owe back I think it was $40,000 back in the springtime. Have you seen much of that in terms of people not wanting to take advantage of it just out of fear?
Well, one of the things we've been advocating with government is to stay away from loan programs. So we've learned lessons from natural disasters like Fort McMurray and High River. And in those cases, governments relied very heavily on loans to get businesses back to work. The challenge was that when those loans became due, often businesses hadn't recovered sufficiently to be able to make those payments. So it actually just deferred the problem 6 months down the road. Most programs that have been rolled out, both provincially and federally, have been grants, so they're non-repayable. It gets cash back into the economy. Business owners can, pay their people. They can get people back to work. They can spend on inventory, and that's really what the stimulus is meant to do: is get the economy moving again, get liquidity back into people's hands to have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, assuming that this pandemic clears up and things ever get back to normal over the next few months, hopefully, fingers crossed, what are you hearing from locals as to how long it will take to get business volumes back to normal?
I think that's the magic question. No one really knows when the end of this pandemic will be, and there's obviously a wide range of forecasts. Some people have said it will be years, not months, and I think that's the uncertainty that's causing the business community the most anxiety. Certainly, I think all of us can plan for a few months or perhaps even a part of a year. But talking out into 2021 and 2022, if some of these restrictions come and go with multiple waves of the virus, there could be some significant impacts. So I think obviously the sooner we can all get back to whatever the new normal is, I hate using that overused phrase, but as soon as we can get there, that's where people will be able to sort of return to their spending levels and their activity levels and move on. But there's no doubt there's going to be disruptions, and we could see other challenges in the future if we have to pull back on some of the recovery and some of the reopening.
Yeah, well, let's hope that it's soon for sure. Now, how important is it right now for residents to buy local whenever possible?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point that people spend money in the local economy. There's been a number of studies over the years, and for every $1 you spend locally, it has an economic impact of $7. So sometimes people will think, well, I'm only going to Calgary to spend a few $100, but that actually turns into a few $1,000s of economic impact you're transferring to another community. The other aspect is that, to remember that sometimes a locally owned franchise, even though it's a nationally bannered business, that's still a local business with a local owner hiring local people. So when we talk about spending your money locally, we mean keeping it inside of our community, inside of our local economy.
Right. That's really important to remember that too. I think sometimes we kind of lose sight of that, especially as you kind of illustrated how far reaching that is. It's a good one
That
to
has a
remember.
big impact.
For sure. Recently, the Lethbridge Region Economic Recovery Task Force opened a physical location, or a one-stop shop, right, where business owners can meet with advisors to gain strategies on how they can function successfully in this new COVID environment. So tell us about this.
Yeah, so we're very fortunate to have a number of professionals that have volunteered and come forward. So we have a number of lawyers, accountants, insolvency trustees, human resources consultants, you name it, we've got expertise available. And all of these professionals have come forward to support the business community. They're volunteering their time to provide initial consultations. The university also stepped forward. They've donated the use of the Penny Building downtown. They've made space available to us to allow us to host these sessions. So on Mondays and Thursdays, business owners can come down to the Penny Building, they can book an appointment, and depending on what kind of advice or expertise they need, we'll connect them with a local expert that can get them started and get them pointed in the right direction. So whether it's financial or legal, the idea is to just get people pointed in the right direction and have them know what next steps they should take.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And that just began this week, right?
We opened on Monday and saw our first clients on Monday. And again, today we had our volunteers down there. So I'm incredibly grateful to all of those amazing professionals who stepped forward and to the university for the use of that space.
Yeah, and you were saying that the advisors are volunteers?
That's correct. So, I mean, these are all very busy people that would normally, be managing their own business portfolios and billing for hours and things like that. And they recognize the importance of helping the business community. That's not to say that it's unlimited free advice. Ultimately, if you decide that there's a course you need to take, you'll have to pursue that with those folks and others in the community. But again, the initial consultation, the initial advice to get people started, we're taking care of that because it's how we think will accelerate the recovery.
That's amazing that they're willing to give of their time and expertise to help other business owners. That's really nice. So what business backgrounds do they represent?
So like I said, we've got a number of lawyers. So there's about 50 members of the Lethbridge Bar Association, all with various different areas of practice. We've got accountants, folks that specialize in insolvency. So if people feel like they're up against a debt wall and maybe looking at bankruptcy, that's not the only option. We want people to know that there may be multiple paths. Business owners that have had to perhaps change employment contracts or lay staff off, we've got some folks with HR expertise because that can be hard to navigate, and rules in Alberta recently changed around employment standards. So what you knew a year ago has changed, and so it's important that people be aware of some of those changes. And again, if someone comes in with a problem that we don't have an expert for, we've got a great community in Lethbridge. We'll do our best to find someone who can speak to it. We've also got business advisors available at Tech Connect. So that's the technology incubator here in town. And all of those mostly focused on entrepreneurship and business startups. But all of those advisors are available virtually. And again, that is all free. That is all paid for by the task force to, again, get the business community back up on their feet as fast as possible.
That's great. And then on the flip side, what kind of response have you received from the business community?
Yeah, I mean, the early stages has been good. I think, people are just becoming aware of what hours and what processes. We are having people complete a bit of an intake process because we do want to educate them a little bit on, we need to understand what their business challenges are. Of course, we do want them to take precautions when they come down to the center. They have to know that they need a mask and, those kinds of things. But the initial response has been good. And I think people are just appreciative of having a place to turn to. There's no judgment. It's, again, just advice. People can come, feel comfortable that, no one's going to laugh at them. No one's going to point out the errors of their ways. We're all in this together. This is an unprecedented situation. Again, it's how do we solve problems and how do we move forward?
Awesome. Well, with that, we are out of time. Trevor Lewington, CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge, thanks so much for joining us today.
Appreciate the opportunity to be with you again today.
Our next guest knows firsthand what it's like for life to take an unexpected turn. Ann Maines is the television host of A Better Us and the former host of 100 Huntley Street, which we air right here on Miracle Channel. And 1 year ago, Maines received a devastating phone call from her doctor informing her of a cancer diagnosis. And she's journaled her way through this journey over the past year and has now turned that journal into a devotional to help others. Joining me now from her home in Waterloo, Ontario is Ann Maines. Ann, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jeanette. It is my privilege to be with you.
Now, you've had such a brave journey over the past year, but maybe take us back to that day that you found out you had cancer. Your husband was away that day, right? Maybe tell us the story.
Yes, he was away. Well, nothing prepares you for the phone call from the doctor. Ron was 2 hours away playing golf in a fundraising golf tournament, and I was all alone at home when the doctor called me that the results of a recent biopsy had come back. Now, I had had mammograms for years, faithfully, and they had always been fine, but this last mammogram was different. And so the doctor then sent me for further testing, and the biopsy then showed that there were cancer cells present. She was shocked, and I, of course, was shocked. After I hung up the phone with her, I didn't know what to do, Jeanette. I thought, do I call Ron? Do I let him know? Or do I give him one last day to just be carefree and normal? I thought, well, I'll just call him and kind of feel out the situation, just see what's going on. And so as soon as he answered the phone, he was laughing. And the first thing he said to me was, honey, I think I might have just won the putting competition. And my heart sunk. I thought, oh no, he's having such a good day. So I didn't know what to do, but I thought Ron would want to know. So he slipped away so we could chat. And I told him, and he said to me, honey, give me 10 minutes. Let me get my golf clubs. I'm going to come home. I'll call you from the car. And so for the next hour and a half, basically, we talked and prayed and cried on the phone. And it was during the course of that conversation, Jeanette, that I said, I really feel like God wants me to journal my journey. There was no purpose for it. I just had that sense. And so he said to me, well, I'll be home in about 45 minutes. Let's hang up and you write your first journal entry. And that's what I did.
Oh, wow. So right there and then that led you to start journaling right away that very day, and it just you just kept going from there. Was it sort of a way to process what you were going through a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what was happening. I just sensed that God wanted me to write down what I was learning through this unexpected journey. Every time I journaled, every time I wrote a devotional, I started with where I was that day. From like a month after my diagnosis, I had surgery. A couple of weeks after that, it was revealed that I would need chemotherapy, which I totally did not expect. I didn't see that coming. In fact, when the doctor told me that, I literally doubled over in her office. I couldn't believe I was going to need chemotherapy. But you know what? It was just part of my journey. And as you can imagine, I suffered all the side effects that come with chemotherapy. I mean, I had severe nausea, severe fatigue, and I lost all of my hair. And as a woman, that's kind of hard to take. But in fact, I'm still regrowing it. I'm sporting my new wig here, just trying to feel as normal as possible. But throughout the whole journey, Jeanette, every milestone that I had, every dark night of the soul, I would just pick up my laptop and my Bible, and I would just start journaling. And it was through those journaling times that God really brought healing and comfort to my spirit.
Right. And this daily journaling you started actually publishing, right, on social media? So that's a very public forum to start your, share personal thoughts. So what was that like?
It is. Well, after I had written several devotionals and I just found such healing in them as I was writing them. I just felt God's Holy Spirit just bringing healing to my spirit. I started thinking, well, I know there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. This was last fall, and I thought if I can even help one person by sharing one of my devotionals on Facebook, then it would be worth it. And so I started doing that. I started just very timidly sharing here and there. And I was really surprised at the feedback I got. Before I knew it, I had thousands of people tracking with me in my devotionals, many of them writing back private messages to me, sharing their own difficult journey they were going through. And it wasn't always health related, sometimes it was relationship or financial or whatever. But it was something difficult that they're going through. And many of them would say, Anne, these are so helpful. You need to consider putting them into a book. And so that's kind of where the idea for the book came from.
Right. So that came from people that were following you, and you're like, hey, this is a good idea. So this led you to actually publish your journal entries into a book called Coffee with Him, Mornings with God on an Unexpected Journey, right? So it was released on June 10th of this year, and it quickly became the #1 best-selling devotional on Amazon Canada. So congratulations on that, by the way. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. You know, Jeanette, when God first led me to start writing these devotions a year ago, over a year ago, there was no purpose for them. You know, it was just me kind of stepping out in obedience, saying, okay, God, if you want me to journal, if this is the best way you have me to heal through this journey, here I am, I'm going to do it. Little did I know what would happen as a result of the 31-day devotional that this process became. And I'm just so thankful to God that He was able to use the lessons that I learned, because there are so many dark nights of the soul when you're walking this kind of a journey. And especially now during COVID, there are so many dark nights of the soul for so many people. And so He knew even then, a year ago, that the lessons I was going to learn would be used to help other people now.
That's amazing. So now, to be clear, it's a devotional. It's not a biography or a memoir of your journey, right? So why don't you explain a little bit? Tell us about the book. What's in it?
Well, it's like I said, it's a 31-day devotional. The very first day, I encourage readers to just pick it up first thing in the morning, Coffee with Him. So grab your Bible and the book, the Coffee with Him book, and a cup of coffee, and just go somewhere private with the Lord. Have those few extra moments with Him before you start your day. That's what I'm encouraging readers to do. Each day is a very short reading. You can read it in less than 5 minutes. Each day ends with what I like to call sips to savor. Sips to savor. So it's on the track with the coffee theme. And then, so those are questions that you ask yourself about the devotional. How can that relate to my life today? And then there's a prayer starter, where sometimes if you're in a difficult time, you really don't know what to say to God. I know I had lots of times like that through my journey, where you just kind of sit there and say, okay, God, I've got so many questions. I don't know what to say. I wrote just a very short prayer starter at the end of each day's devotional, where it just begins a conversation with the Lord based on what you just read in that day. And then there's a notes section. I don't know about you, but I love taking notes when I'm going through a devotional. I like to journal, write down what I'm thinking, what's going through my mind as I'm reading what the author is saying and what the scriptures are saying. So that's basically the book. And the very first day of the 31 days is the very first devotional I wrote on that day, June the 10th, 2019, when my husband was still driving home to be with me. And that's how it starts and continues for 31 days.
It must have been hard for you to pick which 31 to put in your book, was it? How long did that take?
It was very hard, because these are, like you said, Jeanette, these are so personal. And I share a lot in the book of my journey. I talk a lot about the day I lost my hair. Just a week into my second chemo treatment, I had 8 chemo treatments, 2 weeks apart, beginning the middle of September and finishing the week before Christmas. And just a week after my second chemo treatment, my hair started coming out in handfuls like literally handfuls. And I knew that it was going to all come out, I was told. So I called my longtime friend and hairdresser, Ely, and I said, Ely, can you come to my house and shave my head? And so he did. He came, and I sat with my eyes closed and I held my husband's hand and I cried through most of it as Ely shaved my head. And that's one of the devotionals in the book because it was during that time that I sensed God's presence in such a sweet way. You know, when our heart is broken, when we're going through something that we just did not see coming, it doesn't take God by surprise and it doesn't take him unawares. He is with us. He is right there with us, holding us if we'll only let him. And I don't know about you, Jeanette, but I found that throughout my life, in some of those darkest times, those are the times that you learn more and more about the character of God, the love of God, the depth of the intimacy he wants to have with us. There's a verse in Isaiah that I just love. It's Isaiah 45, verse 3. In the, I think it's the NIV version, it says, God says to you and to me, he says, I will give you treasures in darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you will know I am the Lord your God. And that says to me, as we are walking through those dark places, those dark times, not evil darkness, but confusion, you know, where you're floored, you don't know what's going on. As we walk through those dark times, we're not alone. God is with us. And not only is he with us, he has gifts for us in that darkness that we can only receive as we walk through those dark times. And for each of us, they look different. Some of them are very obvious and some of them are more subtle. But they're tailor-made for each of us on our journey.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your journey, obviously it's been with cancer, but obviously this devotional is for anyone going through any unexpected journey. And as you're just explaining all of that, that really makes sense to me. You know, that any unexpected journey, someone could pick up your book and probably just get so much out of it.
And you know what? God's word is filled with promises to us that he is with us no matter what we are going through. And that's another part of the book is as I was walking through this, my husband and I decided to call it a healing journey. So as I've been walking through this healing journey, there were so many Bible verses that just became so precious to me. So at the back of the book, I put over 100 of my favorite verses. So they're there for you if you're going through a difficult time. They're listed there because God's word is precious to us and he promises to be with us no matter what we go through. If we'll only come to him, dig into his word, receive from him the healing and the comfort that he is offering to us.
Yeah. Now, since then, you've had more of a positive diagnosis, right? Tell us where you are right now.
Yes, I have. Earlier this year, the doctors pronounced me cancer-free.
Wow.
And I am so thankful for that. I'm still healing, as you can imagine, but I'm just so thankful that that is the direction my journey has taken. And I'm so excited to be able to share with others that God can be with you too, no matter what you're going through.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that you are cancer-free, so you are in remission now.
Yes,
That's
yes.
wonderful. Where can people find your devotional, Anne?
Well, we have set up a very easy website for anyone. If you want to get my book, it's coffeewithhim.ca. Coffeewithhim.ca, and that'll link you to exactly where you can get the book.
What has been the feedback so far from people?
Oh, it's been amazing. There have been so many people who have sent me private messages saying the devotionals in the book are meeting them exactly where they are. Many have said they are in the middle of a cancer journey. Many have said they've come through the other side. But I'm amazed, Jeanette, how many people are relating to the book that aren't having a health crisis. I heard from a lady last week. Her husband was just last week killed in a motorcycle accident, and she had just started reading my book, and she said that it's ministering to her. And so I am just so thankful to God that he is using me, of all people, to be able to reach out to them and bring his love and his healing and his comfort to them.
That's amazing. You guys are just going through such a big journey together. And your husband, Ron, has been with you through this the whole way.
Every step of the way. Yeah, Ron, he went with me to every chemo treatment. He was there holding my hand. He's been my rock. He likes to say he's my rock with a lowercase r, because Jesus is my rock with the uppercase R.
Aw. Well, and it looks like we are out of time. Unfortunately, I could go on talking to you all day. But Ann Mays, television host of Better With Us, and now author of Coffee with Him, Mornings with God on an Unexpected Journey. And it's been wonderful having you on the show. And all the best to you and your husband as you continue to go through this journey together.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. It's been my pleasure.
The world has changed with the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. The response to this has really varied from country to country, but it seems the most common response is a high degree of anxiety and worry. Joining me now to talk about it in studio is Graham Bretherick, a registered psychologist, president of Run Free Ministries in Lethbridge, also author of The Fear Shift, Dominated by Fear No More, available at runfreecounseling.com. Graham, welcome back to BCN.
Thank you for inviting me, Hal. Good to be here.
You bet. Now let's talk about COVID-19. A lot of people are impacted by this around the world. Here in Lethbridge, I mean, we have some cases here as well. When was the last time you saw the level of anxiety and fear so high?
Well, I don't think I've ever seen it so high as this. I mean, I'm just a little over 70, and I don't know that I've ever seen it in all of the things we've been through. I mean, I wasn't around when World War I and World War II were, obviously, but I have not seen it this high in a long time, maybe ever.
That's incredible. Yeah. Now, what is the difference between fear and simply really being concerned about something?
Well, no, let me step back. Fear actually has two sides to it. There's positive side of fear, and it's basically a good thing. Without fear, you'd get killed walking across the highway. Without fear, you could get, all kinds of problems. So we need fear to warn us. So fear basically works as a warning signal. However, the fear of fear, which is what I see going on now, I call negative fear, that fear is quite different because we get overwhelmed by the fear.
Okay, how about anxiety?
Well, anxiety is just repressed fear. So if you keep pushing the fear, I don't want to think about it, you push it down, that's what anxiety is.
Some people say maybe the media is paying a little too much attention to COVID-19. But at the same time, the world is taking notice. Right. Thousands of people dying in Italy, not just in China. It's rampant around the world right now, so we want to be concerned. But is there a point in time when we're going beyond staying informed and maybe pushing negativity?
Yeah, let me just say this. The positive fear is really faith. All right, that if you look at what it is, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So we need wisdom. That's really an expression of faith. But if you think about what negative fear is, it's really be controlled by the fear of fear. So it depends what you focus on. So I just say this, that faith really has to do with focus. What are you focused on? So if you focus on the television, you focus on all the bad reports and constantly get that, and that's all you're getting, you're going to be fearful and you're going to be overwhelmed by it and you're going to become quite anxious.
With Bridge City News, we also like to include some good stories. When it comes to COVID-19, like there are different volunteer groups in Canada and the United States, they're helping even Holocaust survivors who are shut in their homes and making meals and bringing them meals. So it's nice to see the good things that humanity is doing at the same time, right? And that's pretty important, isn't it?
It is. Well, you think back to some of the Jewish people who held people in their homes at the danger of their lives. And so why did they do it? Because they believed it was the right thing to do. They had a faith and believed in it was the right thing to do. But they took their lives in their hands in one sense, because if they got caught, they were dead. So I love the fear that turns into a positive thing, and we do good things because we're not afraid of being overwhelmed by what's happening around us.
Some people like to get their news sources as well from social media.
Yes.
Whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so forth. Can we spend maybe too much time on social media that may impact our own psyche?
Well, I think we can, yeah. And again, it's focus. What are you focused on? So if all you read is all the negative stuff, then that starts to overwhelm you. Your emotional system can't actually handle that. You need to put a focus on some good things, some positive things.
Some structure.
Yes.
You know, it's funny because a lot of times we give our kids a certain amount of hours that they can spend maybe on their computers or on social media. Maybe we should do the same for ourselves, discipline ourselves, right?
Well, I watch the news because I want to be alert. I want to keep.
You're watching Bridge City News to see what's going on.
I am watching the news. I watch Bridge City News.
That's right. That's awesome.
So, but I'm also reading my Bible, and I'm also declaring Psalm 91 over my family and over my every day when my wife and I share communion together and we pray together, we read Psalm 91 over us and make that as a declaration. So I'm not living in the fear that I'm going to get COVID-19.
I think it's natural to get scared. A lot of us get scared
Yeah.
for whatever happens, right?
Fear's natural.
So fear will come, but how can we really shift that fear into faith? That trusting God will provide and protect and watch over us?
Just what I've said is that if you don't worship the God who's over all of this, see, worship is a real help that way. And so is reading our Bibles, so is meditating, so is talking with other Christians who have enough faith. So I've been encouraging people in their faith. All right, so that's what I keep doing because what are we focused on again? I come back to it. What are we focused on?
A lot of people are concerned as well with COVID-19, the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus,
Sure.
that it's going to impact a lot of those who already have compromised immune systems,
Right.
such as our parents and our grandparents. How do we put some of those fears at ease? Because we're really worried about the elderly.
Right. Well, and I think that's the positive side of fear. Be alert. Be smart. You know, be aware that if you're in your 80s, you're going to be more vulnerable than if you're in your 40s or 30s, et cetera. But that focus is a good focus because then we're being smart. Like I think it's good to be careful with how much we're connecting with people. That's smart. But I'm not going to be afraid to go out in public because that would then control me. My fear then controls me. And I don't want that to happen. I want my faith to control me.
Graham, what do you say to people who've lost their jobs because of COVID-19? My daughter's one of them. She was working as a line cook in Ontario. Her restaurant shut down. A lot of people are fearful they're going to lose their jobs. And how are they going to pay their bills? Their rent, their food, or mortgage payments?
Well, again, let me take you back to if God is my provider, and therefore He's going to make provision in these difficult times. I understand the fear. I understand we have to be alert to, and understand that when we lose our job, we have to start thinking about what we're going to do. But at the same time, I've been through times when we haven't had much money. And so what did I do? Did I get fearful? Sometimes yes. Or did I go back and say, wait a minute now, who's my provider? Am I my own provider or is God my provider? And that's what carried me through. And I shifted my faith again and said, Father, you are my provider. I'm trusting you through this.
You know, sometimes people sit down, and I'm guilty of this myself sometimes. You get on your knees and you pray to your Heavenly Father. He'll provide and protect, and you'll leave it at the foot of the cross.
Right.
Then you get right back up and you take those worries right back from God, right?
Yes, I know.
So how do you get into practice of just leaving those problems at the cross?
Well, I mean, because I think we need constant reminders. We're slow learners, all right? So just constant reminders. Every day, that's what I say, my wife and I are choosing to have communion every day as the focus on the cross. That's what we're doing. And we're just simply saying, you're our protector, you're our provider, you're our peace, and we're going to operate in that. And we need that reminder because it's easy to shift back, whoops, everything else is very frightful out here. So I'm just keeping my focus here. I'm not unaware, I'm not naive about this, but I'm keeping my focus here.
A lot of people as well, Graham, are quite concerned about, you know, the consequences of the anxiousness, you know, maybe being sleepless,
right?
You know, maybe getting stressed out to the point that you have an ulcer perhaps.
Right.
So physiologically speaking, how can you control the anxiousness to the point where you don't make yourself sick?
Well, I think what we probably have to do is talk about it. Like anxiety usually happens because we push it down and we keep it quiet and we don't talk to anybody. It is much better to talk about it, but we're ashamed of our anxiety. We are ashamed of our fear focus. And so we just keep it quiet. And then what happens is it's turmoil inside of us. It's much better to sit down with someone and say, look, I'm afraid. All right, let's talk about it. Let's work it through. Let's pray it through. Let me help you change the focus, which is what we're doing in counseling. We're helping people shift the focus.
How about shift the focus onto something else, like working on a vehicle, doing some gardening perhaps? Springtime now?
It's a bit premature for gardening.
Well,
but when we come to it,
right?
that's true. I think
like
that's
hobbies,
good.
right?
Yes, I think that's a good thing to do, as long as that's not an escapism. You know, like I say, here's what I sense: people are way more full of fear than they realize, And so they push it down, and then something like this comes along, and all of a sudden, whoop, all this stuff comes to the surface. So what I want to do then is learn how to walk this out and work this through so that I actually gain mental health or emotional health through this process.
Do you think as well maybe COVID-19 is a good test of our own faith?
It is.
And our relationship with God?
I'm saying these days, how real is your faith? Does it work for you or is it religious? In other words, it works on a Sunday morning. I go and I do my Sunday morning thing and I come back, and then the next day on Monday, I'm back to living in worry and fear. By the way, if you're worrying, you're not trusting. If you're anxious, you're not trusting. Those are good signals. If I'm anxious, if I'm worrying, I'm not trusting. I'm not trusting God. So then I can confess that. That's one of the things I'm saying to people. Then just confess it. I'm worried, which means I'm not trusting. I repent. That is, I change my thinking from worrying, I'm going to solve my own problems, to being able to say, I trust you, Father. You are my provider. You're my protector. You're my peace.
How important is it then to really meditate on His Word?
Very important. I do it every day because I can't.
Does that give you that peace that you need then, right?
It does. It does for me. And I realize that sometimes when I'm dealing with counseling and people are quite anxious, I have to keep myself focused back for their sake and my sake on what I really believe. What do I really believe? So I'm reading the Bible with that in mind. Psalm 91, again, I just read that before. That's a really good one. But the other day I was reading in Nehemiah chapter 1 and 2 in my Bible reading, and Nehemiah has to go before the king. If he says the wrong things, off with his head. So he approaches this with prayer, and then he puts action to his prayer, and then tells the king what's going on. Basically, the king says, why are you so down? Why is your face sad? Now, you're not allowed to be in the king's presence and have a sad face, apparently, in those days. But he did it, took a risk, and then God gave an option to be able to tell the king what was going on. His heart was heavy for Jerusalem, etc. But that he faced his fears.
As human beings, do you think we have a tendency to put more faith in our consequences rather than in trusting in God?
Oh, yes.
In that relationship?
Oh, yeah. It's the natural thing is to get focused on the world that I live in and the environment I live in. That's
and woe is me sometimes, a pity party, right?
Yeah, and pity really is a form of pride. You know, that self-pity is a form of pride. So if I'm focused on myself, I'm not walking in humility. And humility basically is saying, I trust you, Father. I trust you to take care of me during these times. These are actually not bad times. From my point of view, they're actually, I'm not being naive when I say that. There's lots going on. But it's great opportunity in the kingdom of God to advance the kingdom of God and say to people, where's your faith? Let me help you with it. Let me come alongside you.
How important is it then, Graham, to really focus on things we should be thankful for?
I like that. I think that's really good because otherwise you get into a negativity. So look, I've got this to be thankful, this, and you put it helps change the focus, helps change where you
count your blessings, right?
Name them one by one. That's right, the old hymn says, yeah. So it's good, we should be doing that. And we should be encouraging one another along the line, you know, because I know people, I talked to someone the other day who was really quite fearful. And I just said, let me just put a little different shift. And as I did, in about 15 minutes, that person has shifted from a fear focus to a faith focus.
How can we really help our children deal with anxiety?
Talk about it. Worst thing you can do is just be anxious. They pick it up. They sense that. So I just say, talk to your children. Open it up. Are you worried about something? Are you concerned about this? It depends on the age of the child. But I say, what are you worried about? Let's talk about it. That's one of the ways we shift from letting it control us because we push it down. Because often, again, we feel ashamed, which is hiding. We feel ashamed of our fear. I shouldn't be afraid. I shouldn't be afraid. But fear is a natural emotion. But I just not get caught in it. I don't want to get trapped by it.
I know a lot of times as well as a man, I can be fearful of a situation that I have no control over.
Right.
You know, because a lot of men, it's like we want to be able to control certain things and help our families the best we can. We want to problem solve, get it right in there. But sometimes you can't. And that's what's really difficult. And that can create more anxiousness.
Right.
Right?
Well, we like to stay in control. All of us do. I'm no different than anyone else. I like to stay in control. But I have to realize that basically I worship a God who's controlling everything. The coronavirus has not caught God off guard. He's not shocked by it. Now, he didn't create it, but he's not caught off guard by it. So then I go back to God, all right, how do I handle in this time? How do I walk this out with faith? How do I become a positive influence instead of a negative influence?
Some people would ask as well, Graham, perhaps non-believers, why would God, your God, allow something like this to happen, to take so many innocent lives? COVID-19?
Yeah, it's not like he allows it to happen. It's the result of a sinful world we live in, and all the fear and all the anxiety and all the greed and all the stuff that's going on around us. I mean, that's a result of a fallen world. But God always says, I can turn all things from evil into good. So, that's what Romans 8:28 basically, we go back to that. God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's my faith stand. I keep my focus on Jesus.
So Graham, some closing thoughts on a message you want to deliver to seniors who are watching, families who are watching, who are impacted by COVID-19 and are concerned about the novel coronavirus.
Right, well, I'm a senior, right, and have been for quite a number of years, so I understand that. But I would say to seniors, if you become worried and anxious, use that as the first signal, I'm not trusting. I'm not really trusting God. My faith has to work for me. If it's not real, what is it really? It's religion. And I'm not into religion, I'm into reality.
A relationship.
A relationship with Jesus Christ. And if it doesn't work for me, why am I doing it?
Graham Bretherick, registered psychologist, president of Run Free Ministries in Lethbridge, and author of The Fear Shift, Dominated by Fear No More. Thanks a lot for joining me today in studio.
You're welcome, Hal. It's a joy and a pleasure.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.